Graeme, Edward, Claus, do you have any indications, any reflections? Is there really a big market just waiting there? A lot of private investors, a lot of people really interested in buying tokenized real estate assets. Who would like to answer?
Well, I can go from our experience because on our platform, we invite our investors. We have 2,000 investors who are registered on our platform, and we invite them to get indications of interest on our assets. So it gives us a soft cap table on each one of our assets to understand how many people are interested in how much. And we've seen a significant growth in the demand or the request of expressions of interest on our site, which has given us comfort that as we continue to bring this in, this is before we even announced they're on the market, but now that we're bringing it to the market and actually engaging investors and talking to investors about different projects, I think that's a good sign that they're looking for opportunities where they can place their money. So yeah, and we're, as we talked about with regards to the cryptocurrency owners who are getting these gains, you think about strategies, tax strategies. If they're making these profits now, they can't realize these profits without paying capital gains tax. But DeFi lenders are actually lent them borrow against their crypto that they can use to buy real estate. It's actually producing revenue. So they now have a very strong advantage to be buying into income producing real estate assets. So I think there is demand. I think more education is still important to let people know what's available, but I think there's definitely demand from what I'm seeing on our site.
Any other reflections from the panelists?
Yeah, I would add, at least most of the investors that I've talked to, they don't care. They don't care if it's a token or if it's a piece of paper. They want to know what the asset underlying the security is. Like if I have the option to buy Google on the NASDAQ or Google as a token that trades somewhere else, I'm going to look at that individual asset. And what's going to happen over time is investors will start to see, oh, if this company is managing their securities in a tokenized form, I save 0.5% a year, or I save 1% a year on management fees because they aren't paying the same costs that they are. Their CFO can more easily manage corporate governance. The company can trade more easily. Shares trade for 5 cents instead of $5. Those types of things are what the investor will see, but ultimately they care about the underlying asset. So if there's an amazing asset, the investor generally is just going to care about the underlying asset. They're going to assume that the company is managing the shares properly, whether it's a piece of paper or whether it's a token. So I think, again, just to reiterate, the investor cares about the asset, and what they're going to see is that there are increased benefits to them in terms of management fees that they're going to pay in a tokenized form because the fees will be lower.
But as I understand many of you, this is also about bringing new investors into real estate. And I know that real estate investments are really complex investments. I mean, I know that if it's a tokenized asset, you don't buy the whole entire building or property, but buying a property is often a lottery. Of course, you can follow the market prices, but the real performance of that building, what hides inside of all things that needs suddenly to be fixed, or new energy regulation and how it's actually performing, it's quite difficult actually to figure out the real estate market, and today it's really intransparent what you buy. So isn't this a danger if you just say let's tokenize properties? So the transaction process is really transparent, but still the asset behind, is that really a transparent thing you buy as a new investor in this market?
Well, hey, Jack, I'll just say that's a great question. And I believe that the beautiful part about the tokenization aspect and allowing investors to buy into digitized assets, they're not buying the assets, themselves and managing themselves. They're buying behind, very experienced operators who have track records of success. So if I now have a chance to buy right alongside of Warren Buffett on an asset, he's buying 40%, I'm buying 1%. I feel really good that I'm learning from my experience of buying with Warren Buffett as opposed to just buying any kind of asset. You're right. You just don't, pull the straw and buy a property and hope it goes well. You got to do your research. You're still going to do your due diligence, but you're really going to trust in the track record of the experienced operator who's running that property and see what else they're managing. And so that way you feel like you're learning, getting a fast education from that sponsor. So.
Thanks. I can also see that Tuukka, that it was you were looking to like some specific kind of properties that you would think this is the investment market around these second tier cities, the SME segment. This is where you're really looking into. Maybe also reflections from the panelists here. Would you see that tokenization will especially take off within certain types of property assets, certain types of property? Is there any types of property where we will not see this in the years to come? Basically, what will be the trends? What types of property assets do you think will really kick this tokenization off?
Well, I can answer that question from our perspective, that we see that in our setting, the most benefit can be attained from fractionalization in these investments or these properties where the market is really inefficient. So if we can bring new market participants to this kind of market that are maybe closer to the property and have a local knowledge about them, then in these cases at least we find that the benefit for fractionalization would be bigger than maybe in some other cases.
What about from the other panelists? Do you see any, like, is there tendencies in the types of properties that you see that property owners have an interest in tokenizing?
I think the mainstream properties are what are coming to bear most. I mean, we're not seeing a lot of novice owners who haven't bought properties and want us to provide capital so they can make their first purchase. We're seeing very experienced operators and property owners who want to add to their portfolio, or they want to recapitalize their portfolio so they can get more value out of it. So to answer your first question about which ones I think are going to be more attractive, I think the ones that have been very hard to get to, the ones that they've not been invited to the table for, are the ones that people are going to be more attracted to. As Graeme, showed in his outline, you take Manhattan and you look at all the high rises facing Central Park in Manhattan. Those aren't properties for the novice young investor with $20,000 in their pocket. Those are investments for the investor that has $20 to $50 million in their pocket. So to bring those to the table and make that now a ability, let an investor have the capability of buying that kind of investment is going to be very attractive for that investor. They never had that opportunity before. And like I said, they're riding behind, the coattails of very experienced operators. That's just the value of ownership is one thing, but you and I know both the value of the bragging rights. I own a piece of this building or this shopping center or this office or the CBD to anyone in their network is also very rewarding. So I think people now have that opportunity they never had before.
Yeah, I think in terms of which assets are now being tokenized, I think we've hit a very important inflection point, probably the second half of 2019, beginning of 2020, where initially tokenization was something for and I would consider myself early in the tokenization craze, kind of for weird people, right? Like weird techies, pioneers, the trailblazers of sorts. Claus, I hope you don't think I'm calling you weird and saying I don't like you, but because I love you. But it was for the trailblazers. It was for the people who said, "Oh, here's new technology. I want to go try it out." Right? But I think we've hit a very important inflection point where now it's for anyone, because they recognize that there are real benefits in terms of efficiency, automation, and transparency. So we're starting to see the high quality assets that Ed is tokenizing at Red Swan. Whereas in 2017, the majority of the people in the tokenization world were people who saw ICOs raise $100 million or $400 million and go, oh, I can do that just by making a website, and now I can do it compliantly. Those people are not here anymore. They have died out. They've left. They've gone over to figure some other way to raise money. Tokenization, it's now become and will eventually become, in my opinion, the standard, right? So the thing that I always like to say is eventually regulators will actually ban paper-based stock certificates, right? Eventually they will, because they realize they can't track them as well as they can with something that's natively digital. And so it's sort of like this weird world where initially, if a company was only on the internet, it was sketchy, it was weird, right? Like you wanted a company to only have a physical location, and now it's almost inverted, where if a company only has a physical location and no presence on the internet, you think it's weird. And so the same thing is going to happen with security tokens and the digitization of stocks, where if you have a token, it's weird. Like you're like, oh, this is a strange company. But what's going to happen is if you only have a paper share certificate and no token that can be tracked on the blockchain, it's going to be weird. And so that we're still a few years away from that, but that's going to obviously, in my opinion, eventually happen. And so those are the kinds of assets we're seeing now. We're starting to see the increase in quality. You can see that on Red Swan's website. And the quality is only going to get better until we realize, oh, it's just the default way to do things.
So you said just a couple years ago? Oh, yeah, just.
I also want to just mention one other factor that we have to consider is that the precursor to the blockchain and tokenization, in my mind, for real estate was crowdfunding, right? I mean, crowdfunding came over the past 3 or 4 years as a way for smaller investors to participate in more institutional type projects, right? And it was, considered a waste of time for many property owners before, because they didn't understand it. It wasn't the name brand institutional banks that they've been working with, or equity houses they've been working with. But now they're outperforming a lot of the major institutions in terms of raising capital from smaller investors. So when you start seeing that transition of small investors now pouring into large quality institutional assets, it lets you know that there's a need for that, right? There's a demand for that. And now we're bringing a second benefit with tokenization by allowing that to be on the blockchain and making it more liquid, so they don't have to stay in it for 5 to 15 years, but they have that tradability. So we've already seen the demand from the masses of investors on a lower level through crowdfunding.
We have another question here from the participant. I don't know who of you will be the best to answer this. What do you think about tokenizing loans as a workaround for legal restrictions to tokenize shares or stocks?
I can say a bit to that.
Yes.
So generally, the main problem with tokenizing stocks is that it's not regulatory clarified in a lot of countries how to do it. So many of the companies that we are speaking to are considering other ways of moving forward, including tokenizing loans. A loan is in most jurisdictions not considered a security, so it's much. You don't get into the same regulatory mess if you tokenize a loan rather than a security or a share. So generally, I think it's doable in most countries, but the main problem might be that the investors might not be equally interested in getting a loan or having a loan with a company or a real estate development company rather than a share, even though you can almost simulate the same behavior with a loan as you can with a share, but you might not see the same investor adoption.
Yeah, we're seeing similar things at Polymath. We're seeing debt become a lot more common, especially when you're talking to the large financial institutions of the world. They're interested in tokenizing $100 billion loans, or like $10 billion loans, $1 billion loans. So they're very excited about the cost savings that you get when your typical origination fees are low single digits, high single digits, maybe even sometimes double digits, and you're bringing that down by a few basis points. That's massive for a really large bond issuance. So we're seeing a lot more financial institutions start talking about loans being tokenized. We work with a company out of Australia It's called Market Lend. They're tokenizing short-term corporate loans. So they have a platform where it's similar to crowdfunding. They have companies who are looking for money, and they have investors who are looking to lend companies money and earn a return. So they've started tokenizing a few of their loans. They've done a couple as a test pilot, just a few $100,000 worth so far. But we're starting to see more and more companies pick up in terms of the debt side because the origination costs are so high. If you can bring them down by a few basis points and the loan is $100 million or $1 billion or so, it becomes massive in terms of the benefits.
Thank you very much. I basically think this is it. I don't have any further questions. So any final comments from any of you panelists? It's time now.
I'd say one final comment: real estate tokenization is going to be absolutely massive. It's going to become the default way to express ownership in real estate. It's really only a matter of time. We're at the very early stages, and there's still a lot more work to be done by people like Ed, Claus, Tuukka, myself, Jakob. But I mean, we're going to get there. Eventually, it's really just a matter of time at this point. It is inevitable.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We are definitely moving down the right path, and we're getting more verification of that on a daily basis. When we first started, we were the ones, shouting out with the bullhorn what tokenization is all about. Now we're getting lots of phone calls from operators, from investors, asking a lot of questions and being invited to speak because people want to know. People always want to figure out a way to make more money and be more efficient. And there's no doubt that what we're bringing to the table is the much more efficient way to raise capital as well as to own, investments in real estate. So yeah, we're definitely on the right track.
Claus, do you have any last comments? No.
I'm trying to unmute myself. No, I fully share I'm in full agreement with the others. I think it will also be massive. I think over the last year or so, we've seen a total change in the market, whereas there wasn't really any interest about a year ago. Now we get, we're overwhelmed with the interest that we get. So it's changing.
Yes, and the lights just turned off. I have this very smart building here, so the lights turned off if I don't move, so that's why it gets a little bit dark here. So I'll just see if there also last. Yes, it's just thank you for the knowledge you share. I guess people can find you on LinkedIn also if they want to get in contact with you. I think also on the I can share if it's all right with you later on. I can put up your emails of where to contact you, and there should also be a recording from this session that we will make available. So thank you everybody in the panel for sharing your time, and Graeme, it was also great that you were able to stay with us for the entire time. Thank you, Claus, for arranging this together with us. And thanks to all the participants and listeners for today. So have a nice day, and hopefully meet you at another events, maybe one day in real life about tokenization and blockchain in real estate. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jakob.
Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.